The F-16, designed to be the best air-to-air tactical fighter, it's been the world's top gun for almost 3 decades. The first operational F-16A was delivered in January 1979 to the 388 Tactical Fighter Wing at Hill Air Force Base. These aircraft are now being replaced by the most innovative 5th-generation fighter aircraft in the world.
Now, North Korea is reportedly testing the possibility of fitting biological weapons to its long-range missiles out of concern its nuclear warheads aren't up to scratch. A Japanese daily says the regime is seeing whether anthrax can survive the intense heat caused when a missile re-enters the atmosphere. Park So-yeon reports.
North Korea's test of its new Hwasong-15 missile in November revealed it has the range to hit any part of the continental United States. It's a worrying development, but that might not be all. Citing an unidentified source in South Korea, the Japanese daily Asahi Shimbun reports that Pyongyang is conducting heat and pressure tests to see whether anthrax could survive a missile's re-entry into the atmosphere. Missiles have to withstand temperatures of up to 7,000 degrees Celsius when they fall to Earth. The source added the regime is likely developing biological weapons because its nuclear-tipped warheads might not be able to reach the U.S. mainland intact.
I believe North Korea has started developing biological and chemical weapons since its technology still isn't good enough to reduce the weight of its warheads.
Anthrax is particularly dangerous. Aside from being deadly, it's difficult to detect as it's hard to see, smell, or taste. The report comes as the Trump administration, in its new U.S. national security strategy, stated that North Korea funnels hundreds of millions of dollars into nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons that could threaten the United States. North Korea rejects the U.S. allegations that it's developing biological weapons, saying it's part of Washington's scheme to stifle the regime.
US weapons are locked and loaded, Donald Trump has tweeted in his latest warning to North Korea. And this is after the president refused to back down on his threat to bring fire and fury to Pyongyang amid global calls for de-escalation. RT's Jacqueline Vuga reports from Washington.
When his comments of threatening fire and fury against North Korea were called into question, Trump hit back, saying maybe they in fact weren't tough enough.
Frankly, the people that were questioning that statement, was it too tough? Maybe it wasn't tough enough. North Korea does not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
Now, when asked what could be tougher than fire and fury, Trump gave the sinister response of "you'll see," leaving everyone frightened that physical action could be the next step in this war of words. Trump also warned Pyongyang that they'd be sorry if they even considered attacking the U.S. or any of its allies.
If North Korea does anything in terms of even thinking about attack of anybody that we love or we represent or our allies or us, they can be very, very nervous. I'll tell you what, and they should be very nervous because things will happen to them like they never thought possible. North Korea better get their act together or they're going to be in trouble like few nations ever have been in trouble.
Now, such statements as these coming from the president have been slammed by a number of American senators who see them as reckless, causing significantly more harm than good.
President Trump is not helping the situation with his bombastic comments.
We need to be firm and deliberate with North Korea, but reckless rhetoric is not a strategy to keep America safe.
I think it was just the wrong message and elevated the situation rather than showing the international community that there is hope for a diplomatic solution.
Unfortunately, it is unlikely that those words will affect Trump's rhetoric, however, meaning the possibility of a democratic resolution is slipping away, seemingly pushing the world closer and closer to the edge of war.
North Korea, in its turn, slammed Trump's comments as being nonsense, and it went on to say that no serious dialogue is possible with the president, who it described as being a guy bereft of reason. Earlier, Pyongyang claimed that it was preparing plans to fire 4 missiles near the US Pacific territory of Guam. We spoke to a former US ambassador to the United Nations. He says that such threats put Trump on the same level as North Korea's leader.
I don't see the plus in these threats. Where are we getting something in return from these presidents' threats? I don't see it. I've never seen the tension so high in the Korean Peninsula. I'm extremely concerned. I hope the president's advisors rein him in. General Kelly, the new chief of staff, he's got to tell the president, you can't conduct foreign policy the way you're doing, with words, with fiery words. Exchanges stooping to the level of Kim Jong-un and the North Koreans, who generate this rhetoric almost every day. But this rhetoric has gotten a lot more intense also from the North Korean side.
Russia's foreign minister has said that the risk of the US-North Korea tensions turning into war is high. RT's Ilya Petrenko has more.
Sergei Lavrov has said that nothing can be decided through war and that in the case of North Korea, a potential military conflict can be enormously dangerous.
I think that the risks are very high, especially considering the rhetoric. There are direct threats of force, with US Secretary of Defense Mattis once again stating that there'd be a huge number of casualties. I think when a fight is brewing, the first step back from the danger line should be taken by the stronger and smarter side.
The Russian foreign minister here was referring to the statements by the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Just to remind you, we heard Mr. Mattis warning Pyongyang against the actions that could, quote, lead to the destruction of its people. So it was a part of a warning, yet he still said these words out loud, a destruction of a nation. So things are getting as serious as they can ever get. Now, in the meantime, some of America's main allies in Europe, the likes of the UK and Germany, they're calling on the American president to de-escalate the tensions. And Angela Merkel once again stressed the urgent importance of a diplomatic solution in this conflict.
The escalation in rhetoric certainly does not solve the problem. I don't see the solution to the conflict right now. I don't think the escalation in rhetoric is the right approach.
So we may read into Donald Trump's tweets as many times as we want, but we cannot still say for sure what is definitely on his mind. The question is right now, which voices will affect his decision-making most? And perhaps that we will find out very, very soon.
China, meanwhile, has condemned Trump's fire and fury remarks. Beijing warned the US president against playing with fire over North Korea. It said any accidental spark could trigger a conflict. What's more, Chinese state media reports the country will protect the North Korean regime if the United States decides to strike first. Well, the possibility of military confrontation is causing a split among America's allies in the Pacific. Australia says it will stand shoulder to shoulder with Washington, but New Zealand says that it's not ready to support any aggressive military action.
We stand shoulder to shoulder with the United States. The ANZUS Treaty means that if America is attacked, we will come to their aid. If Australia is attacked, the Americans will come to our aid. We are joined at the hip. The American alliance is the bedrock of our national security.
Committing to an aggressive response now, while encouraging all involved to avoid escalation, is not a position we want to take.
Curtis Dobler from Webster University in Geneva says that a full-scale conflict between Washington and Pyongyang is unlikely, though some aggression is possible.
I think that it would be better in everybody's interest to de-escalate everything. But as we've seen before, Trump sometimes, the American President Trump, tries to scare people that are listening to him through his rhetoric. But sometimes that's an unfortunate way to function in the international system. I do think we have a possibility that there could be violence. I mean, all-out war, I think, would be foolish on any side. And as you've heard from the Chinese side, that they might even become involved in something like that. And I don't think anybody wants that right now. What I do think is that there is the potential of not full-scale war, but aggression.